So welcome today to Signs of Narcissistic Abuse, How to Spot It, Survive It, and Thrive with Janet Sturtz. This is presentation number 2. We had so many questions last time that we wanted to get to some of those questions. So welcome, Janet.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks. Well, for those of you who haven't met Janet before, I'm going to give her bio. Janet is a licensed clinical social worker and a supervisor in Texas and in Florida. She's also certified in EMDR, in trauma, and in integrative behavioral health. In collaboration with the University of South Florida Center for Traumatology and the U.S. Southern Command, Janet helped train 60 mental health workers in San Salvador after El Salvador suffered 2 major earthquakes in 1 year. She also helped design research interventions for victims of natural disasters throughout Central America. She currently uses her 30 years of experience to help individuals, couples, and families heal and thrive in her position with Rejoice Counseling and the Latari Group. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today, Janet. We appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Cool. So let's talk about understanding and identifying narcissism. What's narcissistic abuse?
Okay. Well, last time I gave the acronym DIMMED. And I've also seen it since then as dimmer. Okay, like you dimmed the light or you made it dimmer. So this is a good way to remember some of the key traits that you're going to experience with a narcissistic person. And D stands for devalue. So devaluation. So he or she doesn't value you, what you have to offer, what you have to say. And, we'll make comments like, well, how do you know that? I don't think that's so. Or, where did you learn that? When it might be something that's pretty accurate. Intimidate for the I. Intimidation is a key technique that they use, and a lot of people are intimidated by their behavior, and it's especially shocking if in the beginning they were really, really nice to you. And as we say, echar flores, they were throwing out the compliments and literally flowers sometimes, and things like that, romantic gestures. And then once they have convinced you that, they're the bee's knees, as they used to say, then some of this other stuff starts coming out. So there's 2 M's. One is minimization, which is kind of like devaluing. Devaluing is you as a person. Minimizing is, oh, that's not so bad. You tell something that happened at work and you want some support, and you get, oh, that's nothing. When I was working, I had to put up with blah, 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 blah. So, and then the other M is for manipulation, the biggie. They are known for manipulating, taking things that mean one thing and changing it into another until you're wondering, am I seeing this correctly? Is this, do they have a point? And so you start to question yourself. You have to be a really strong person and to have kind of experienced growth with this kind of thing in order to not feel that way. And then we have E for entitlement. They are very entitled. It could be ego also. Their ego is very expansive on the surface, but actually, I said last time, if you poke it, it's like a balloon. It just deflates, and that's called a narcissistic wound. So, if something happens where they're found out that this has all been, some lies and some things that aren't true, then that ego kind of shrinks in a bad way. There's a happy medium, to
Mhm.
have a solid ego where you understand yourself and like yourself and know you have things to the offer that are valued, but it can be overly expansive as well, or at least appear that way. Somebody said once that the difference between your apparent self-esteem and your real self-esteem, the greater the distance, the unhealthier it is.
Mm.
So, in other words, if you know yourself, you know your good points and your bad, you know your strengths and your weaknesses, um, that's pretty healthy. But if you really feel badly about yourself, but you present it the opposite, that greater distance is not so healthy. And then if you do dimmed, the other D would be dismissiveness, which is kind of like what we talked about with devaluing and, oh, that's not so bad. And then if you do dimmer, the R would be rage. And I know somebody sent a question in about rage, and we're going to talk more about that because you do see that a lot with people with narcissistic issues.
Mm.
Yeah. So those are, some things to watch for that might clue you in. We have clinical definitions, and I read that to you the last session. Um, but we don't go around diagnosing people we don't have for clients, nor should you. But traits, yes, you can observe traits and come to some conclusions.
Right. Yeah, I can help you to just identify if you need to get further help or if it's really, because I think most of the people who are in these abusive situations feel like maybe they're the problem or they've
They
gotten to a
do.
point of wondering. And so this is to
Yeah,
validate, like maybe you're not the problem.
you got it. The narcissist is good at making them feel that way. And they're usually very nice people. I think that was another question somebody sent in about, what kind of people attract them. Well, they have radar for nice people. And so most of the time, people who are with them are good people, but maybe not the healthiest because they don't have real high self-esteem. They're overly people pleasing. So, they want to please people at any cost, and that's not always good. So we'll talk more about how to change those characteristics if you have been a victim of narcissistic abuse. Do you have a banner across the top of your head? Like
I
I
do? Oh, okay.
No, I asked if you do, but I saw I had to click OK and it went away.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, what would be some subtle signs of narcissistic abuse that people overlook, maybe in the early stages of a relationship, especially if the person seems to be charming or attentive?
Yes, as I said, they're good at presenting themselves very well. And it's really good to pay attention, to listen. Well, this is with anybody you encounter in relationship world, in work, a lot of places. Just, you know, they say that God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. So listen, pay attention. It takes a long time to really get to know somebody. And one of the things you might notice is they're never wrong, or they talk about past jobs or past relationships where they were never the problem, but they're no longer involved there. So that might be a sign. Yeah, a past girlfriend. Oh, yeah, she was terrible. And they might say she was a narcissist because they turn that around a lot of times and identify those who were their victims as narcissists to avoid being termed that themselves. Yeah.
Wow. So, Janet, do these people know that they're narcissists or do they? Yeah.
Good question. That's a very good question. I don't think we absolutely know. Um, but my guess is no. Sometimes you will find people who, through therapy, have concluded that they are narcissistic, but most people who are and go to therapy don't last long in therapy. They don't want to be confronted, they don't want to make changes in themselves, and they don't think they could possibly be the problem. But if they do, and they kind of learn from it and want to work on it, then they might identify themselves as, I am narcissistic and I'm working on it. And I have
Mm.
heard people do that, you know.
Mm. Yeah, there'd actually be hope for that person if that were to happen, right? Because it's some insight into a behavior. Yeah. Fun.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's not the most common. Um, it's considered a personality disorder if it meets the criteria in our diagnostic manual. And those are the least changeable of
Mhm.
the issues that we see as therapists. So they have to really want to change. It's like the old joke, you know, how many social workers does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So true. So
Yeah.
true. So does a narcissistic person have sudden mood changes or get irrational, aggressive, or have a bad temper?
Absolutely. For, I think, kind of cover up reasons, it might be like when they um, don't want to be found out about something, that puts everybody on high alert, you know, don't confront this person, don't, especially children, difficult for
Mhm.
children and spouses. And, you know, um, I don't think therapists so much would be put off by that because we would try to turn it into a learning experience. But um, yeah, and then I've heard two things about this because I had a client whose family, when they would go out on outings, they'd be having a great time. Couple kids, spouse, and the client, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the narcissist would explode. And somebody said that that can be alcoholism, that where they are, let's say Disney World, they couldn't access, I don't know if you can get alcohol there or not, but they wouldn't have a drink even if they had it there, but
Mhm.
knowing that they can't have it makes an alcoholic explode, which leads me to talk a little bit about narcissism and alcoholism. A
Mhm.
lot of times, an alcoholic has what we call the alcoholic personality. And even if they stop drinking, they are what's termed dry drunk,
Mhm.
meaning they still act mean and, you know, abusive. So, but if they do AA and they work on the personality traits as well as not drinking, they become wonderful people. I mean, I've known some really neat people who did that. Um, but that's a little different than a narcissistic personality that's been with this person for a long time. It doesn't change as readily. But yeah, the rage is another sign. Yeah.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Another question was, what does narcissistic abuse look like, and what are the characteristics of victims? Maybe those are
Yeah, I
two
think,
separate questions, but yeah.
yeah, we kind of covered that with you know, the things they,
Dimmed.
and
Yeah.
yeah. And like I said, the victims often have low self-esteem, or they're just plain nice people and they, you know, they are not mean. And so they're easily controlled. Also, the victim might want to control. And a
Mm.
lot of these questions had, how do I make him blah, blah, blah? How do I force him? You don't. the only person you can ever hope to change is yourself. And we can help you with that in therapy if you are a victim of this. And we would be glad to try to help the narcissist if they were super willing and could stand the confrontation, because that's what really heals them. The same with borderline personality disorder. You know, the confrontation is what works, but can they stand that? You know, can they stick around long enough to learn from that?
And the control that the victims sometimes start using, that would be a coping strategy, right? Because their world is so chaotic. It would be.
Well, yes and no. They may
Okay.
have been raised in an environment where they didn't have control, and so when they're an adult, then they want to control. They
Mm-hmm.
might have had a parent that was a narcissist or an alcoholic or whatever, and um, you know, that it could be because of that. And we talked last time about codependence, and I suggest the book on our reading list, Codependent No More. It talks about traits that many nice people have, and they want to help, but they're kind of doing it so they don't have to look at themselves. And so we want to teach them to look at their own issues and realize they can't change other people. So many questions here involve that. How can I make the narcissist? And of all people, you can't. You can't make that person do anything. They have to decide.
Another question was if narcissistic behaviors often interrupt like the joyfulness of special events, birthdays, celebrations, if they're like rude, mean, start arguments, and kind of where does this behavior come from? Like,
Yeah, I think when they're not the center of attention. So I had a client who, her parents were there from out of town, and she told her husband, be on time because it's my mom's birthday. We're going to surprise her with a cake. And it's getting later and later, and he didn't show up. And then finally he shows up and he's drunk.
oh,
And
jeez.
so he says, I'm going to the bedroom, and doesn't even greet the mother-in-law, you know. So that was how he got out of being there for that party. And of course, the client was upset, you know. Um, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And it has to do with not being the center of attention. But
Yeah,
if,
that sounds really passive aggressive.
yeah, exactly. That would probably be a covert or vulnerable narcissist. You know
Okay.
how we
Yeah.
talked about the continuum last time, y'all,
Yeah.
where there's different degrees of narcissism. And yeah, that is passive aggressive. And then the other end of the spectrum is malignant narcissism. They're often in prison. And last time Liz and I were trying to remember the guy's name, we watched the videos about this case, and it was he's Larry Ray, Ray. If you Google it, you can read about him, how he moved in with his daughter at college, and at first all the people in the house thought he was great, all the college students, and he was very nice and very knowledgeable and blah blah blah. And it just went downhill from there until he had reduced these people to mincemeat. And there was even a woman who she was about to finish her residency in psychiatry, of all things, and he really targeted her, and she never did finish. I hope she was able to later, but he just took away all her self-esteem, and it was a really sick case, malignant narcissism. He's in prison right now. But it was very interesting. It was on the Today Show, and it was on Dr. Ramani. interviewed that woman and some of the other people. So that's the end of the spectrum that you hope you never have to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a terrible story of so many victims and so much hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So say we have maybe a child or someone we can't get out of our life, right? I think, if it's a boyfriend or a spouse or a girlfriend, like we can make the choice to leave. But there are people in our lives that maybe we can't, or we don't really want to make the choice to not have them in our life. So, what are some efficient or effective ways of communicating with these people if we need to continue in a relationship?
Great question. First of all, work on yourself, give yourself care. And we talked about that last time. Self care is very important. Get therapy for the support that you get there and friends that you get support from. And on communication, it's important to learn assertiveness, to communicate assertively, directly, succinctly, not to go on and on and on, but just state your boundary and walk away. You otherwise it's like talking to a teenager, and any of you who have had a teenager at the height of teenagehood know that you're not going to win if you keep talking. So you state the rule, you state the boundary, whatever it is, and walk away. Don't talk to me like that, and walk away. And a narcissist will probably rage, and maybe not. It may take them by surprise and go on and on and on. But you have to know that what they did was inappropriate and what you did was appropriate. So you're working on your self esteem, your assertiveness skills, your communication with I messages. So you could start that like this: I don't want you to talk to me like that again. That's even better than the first way I said it.
Mhm.
So, no, I did not do that. You're mistaken. Walk away. You will never have, this was a question, can you have a healthy relationship with a narcissist? If they're a full-blown narcissist, you will never have what's the healthiest kind of relationship. But if you don't want to leave, you can at least salvage your self-respect and not get into tugs of war all the time, and to know your worth. And I think I mentioned the book, You Are the Beloved by
Mhm.
Henri Nouwen, and also books Conrad Bars, and his daughter practices in Dallas, and Suzanne Barr. She's been on the Catholic TV station. And, this all is about you, your self esteem, your self concept, knowing your value, knowing your worth, and especially as a child of God. Okay, you are the beloved. You are God's favorite child, which is a hard concept for everybody to get sometimes, because how could I be the favorite? But you are. Each of us is. So that helps. Um, yeah.
Yeah, because it sounds like you have to really build up your own belief in how precious you are, how beloved you are, in order to not believe like the lies and the manipulation and the browbeating that that you're being subject to. Like
Right.
you're kind of calling BS.
Right.
But
I get
yeah.
a lot of clients who say, well, he says, and I say, let's not quote him anymore. They give all this power,
Yeah,
the power. Don't give your power away.
that's wonderful, Janet. That is a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about if somebody delays having honest conversations or stonewalls? Um, is that a part of narcissism, or is that just a different technique?
Yeah, not necessarily. The Gottmans talk about that when you train with them for marital therapy. And it is one of the four horsemen that they mention. These are four things that are disastrous for marriages. And the last one is stonewalling, wherein you just say, oh, I'm not going to talk about it. Or, you refuse to engage and talk it out. And, this is happening a lot in our society right now with adult children where they cut their parents off and don't want to talk about why, don't want to go to therapy and focus on the family, have something about that. And I've seen it on other things too, where it's becoming more. Oh, on Facebook, there's a lady who talks about it because she did that at one time with her parents and really regretted it, and then realized this is a generation that doesn't want to talk things out. And so I don't necessarily think it's a narcissistic trait, although it could be because they like to be in control, as much as not knowing how to resolve conflict and how. So what the Gottman suggests, and I do this with my couples, is take a break when you feel like that. Okay. And they actually have done research, taking the pulse, taking the blood pressure. And when that goes up, it's fine to say, you know what? I can't talk about this right now. I need a little break. I'm going to walk around the block, but when I come back, we'll continue talking. So that's always the best way with couples to have them tell when they can talk about it, not just they're not going to talk about it. So
Yeah, it's not just avoiding, but it's like, am I in a good place where I'm actually going to hear the other person or not?
exactly.
I know when I get triggered, I feel like kind of flushed and I
Me
feel a
too.
little bit like my thoughts are jumbled
Yeah.
and even this kind of like weird tinkly kind of feeling in my body. And yeah, it's like I can't, anything I say is going to be irrational, right?
Hmm.
Emotional. So,
Although I will say you can learn to lessen that. You can learn to
yeah.
as if it's like dealing with the narcissist, because you're going to encounter them everywhere. If you've already realized the person is a narcissist, then you can keep your calm better.
Mhm.
Okay. um and I know one of the questions I was thinking of, an example of, let's say it's at work and the narcissist is trying to make you look bad to the boss. Okay, so like let's say it's a sales organization, sales meeting, and the narcissist inherited an account from this other guy. And he says in front of the boss, yeah, he said he didn't want to be with you because you always pushed buying stuff that he didn't really need. And so if you have a strong sense of self, and you might say something like, well, isn't that what sales is all about? Did you miss that part of the training? Or something to deflate it. Isn't
Yeah.
that what we do in sales? Is we sell them what they need, but we also try to get them to buy more to up our commissions, and it might be something that they don't really, really need, but in that part of it, because that's true. And then it kind of takes the wind out of sales, and everybody probably kind of chuckle. And so humor is a great way to deal with that, when you realize you're dealing with a narcissist, not to let yourself get um, all out of whack physiologically. Yeah, it's hard though. It's hard until you've practiced it and had a lot of experience with it. I urge a lot of my clients to practice in front of the mirror if they're going to be, dealing with something, to practice assertiveness, talking in front of the mirror when they've never been assertive. There was a great book, which I don't know, I think it's finally on the market again. It went out of print, and then because a lot of my clients I'll tell to read it. And it's for women, but it could be for men too, because I've had unassertive men. But it's called How to Be an Assertive, parentheses, Not Aggressive Woman. And it actually gives scenarios and 3 responses. The passive response, the aggressive response, but where you really want to be in the middle, the assertive response.
That sounds like an awesome book. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great question here. So say a person is, the question's coming from a woman, so we'll just use that.
Okay.
And it appears that maybe she and her husband are separated or divorced.
Okay.
And their children are now older, like adult children.
Okay.
And she's kind of wondering how to effectively respond to behavior that's not nurturing or isn't very kind, but without perhaps calling out the narcissist or saying like, oh, that person's a narcissist, right? Like, how would you go about helping your adult children, right? But without maybe bad mouthing the spouse.
So the spouse says it to the adult children?
It sounds like the wife is wanting to support her adult children, whose father is sometimes less than nurturing, or
and they're all 4 present there.
Yeah, either they're all present and the dad's there too, or maybe the dad's not present and they're alone.
Okay. Yeah. I would just say, well, you may have noticed at times that your dad approaches things differently, and I think you've told me before that you thought he was selfish. Well, that's true, but we still, love everybody. We're taught to love everybody, but we don't have to put up with anything that's directed at us that's not true. So you can just quietly make a statement, that's not true. I don't do that. Or I would teach them to be assertive too, or say, I wish you wouldn't talk to me like that, Dad. I'd like to have a better relationship with you. And sometimes it works when it's the kids, they'll want that relationship with the kids, but it's pretty hard. And the parent really shouldn't take on the responsibility of mending, sometimes out of guilt for having married him. They will overdo it. Another thing I've observed a lot is they will defend the person when the child is seeing reality. I don't advise that at all, because then the child does not trust his gut. If they say, Dad was really mean when I was with him Saturday. Oh, what happened? Yeah, that was kind of mean. Validate the child and his perceptions. Don't feel you have to defend the narcissist, but don't outright criticize him for no reason either. It's a fine line.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, oh yeah, that was pretty hurtful. Versus like, yeah, your dad's such an SOB, like he always does crap like that, right? Like,
right. No.
You don't want to do that.
Right. Yeah, there's kind of a happy medium between, oh, your dad's wonderful, when they know he's not, and then outright criticism.
Yeah.
No,
well, I'm noticing, Janet, it's almost 12:40.
Oh my gosh.
And we have so many other questions that we could ask you, but I want to make sure that if anybody in the audience has a question that they would really like to ask Janet, please unmute yourself or put it in the chat, right? And we'll get to it. Also, if you'd like to reach out to Janet, you see that her information is now placed in the chat. And we would also appreciate it if you would give us a rating on Yelp or on our YouTube page also, if you would like and subscribe to that channel, that would be awesome. So switching themes, some other people were asking, like, how do we assess our own narcissistic traits or behaviors? Like, is there a good way to judge if you're the narcissist in the relationship? Or
I
yeah,
always tell people, well, if you have to ask, you're not.
because narcissists
Because
don't ask that question usually.
they don't usually ask, am I the narcissist? They identify the other person as the narcissist. Um, but yeah, you may have some selfish traits. Like I said last time, we all have some selfishness, but just because they tell you that you're the narcissist, if your self-esteem is good and you know yourself, you probably won't buy that. But when they do it constantly to you, it can be hard to see reality. You kind of get away from logic. So, it's good to question our own behavior, do an examination of conscience. Did I do something selfish or mean or whatever? But I think most of the time you're asking that question because you've been told by the narcissist that that you are selfish, you are the one, so much that you start to believe it, you know.
A
Um,
similar question was, can
mhm.
somebody pick up habits of things that they went through in a narcissistic relationship? Can someone start doing that to other people?
Yes, I would say that. I had to think about that question a long time, and I
Mm.
jotted something down. Let me see what I wrote here. I think that was towards the end of the questions.
Mhm.
Um,
If you want, we can come to it in the next webinar. I think we have enough to do a
yeah,
part
but
3.
yeah, I forget what I was going to say, but it it's most of the time it's because they have told you that and you start
Mm.
to believe it. But ask people who like the therapist. Sometimes they'll say to me, oh, I don't know, I think I'm narcissistic. And I know that person so well by then. No, you're not a narcissist. Okay. I can tell you're not. You're a victim of it. Um,
It
but
sounds actually like it's bordering on a theme that's really close to my heart, which is how a lot of us Catholics are always feeling like we need to sacrifice and do the hardest thing and be unselfish always, right? And so then when we do need to actually do some self-care, need to do something for ourselves, not please people or be a people pleaser, it feels like maybe I'm being selfish. And then
yes,
we might think, oh, I'm being a narcissist because I'm, you know,
right, right.
getting my
So
daily workout in, oh my gosh, I'm
unearned
such a
guilt.
sinner. I'm making
Yeah.
fun of people. I shouldn't say that, but like,
No,
you
no,
know,
really, but that people think like that, when
yeah.
really God loves us. He wants us to take care of ourselves. And I'm sure he's happy when you take care of your temple, right? So, yeah, that's a good example. Very good example. That happens a lot. People, they think that pleasing everybody is the way to heaven or but Jesus didn't, did he?
Mm-mm.
He didn't. When he went in the temple with the money changers, he wasn't too kind to them. He told it like it was. He called them out. So, yeah, I think that does happen a lot. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat. So, do narcissists have a tendency of repeating harmful actions or words committed against the narcissist? And Is
Oh,
this a pattern indicative of anything? So I'm thinking it's like things that were done to them, they're doing to others.
yeah, that's a really good question. Yes, if they're a child of a narcissist, they might go one way or the other, be too people pleasing or narcissistic. That can happen, right? So that could be. Yeah. Um, I don't know what else to say about that other than that makes sense. Oh, there was a question too before about narcissistic entities in systems theory.
Oh, yes.
And do we have a little time? I was gonna.
Yeah, let's go for it. We have 10 more minutes. Yeah,
Yeah, because
or
it
at least
kind
five.
of relates to this.
Mhm.
So if you're a system, okay, systems theory, the question said systemic theory, but systems theory is taught a lot in mental health, social work, business courses. And it says that everything's a system. You by yourself are a system because you interact with other things. In a family, that's a system. And everybody can have their role, right? You've heard about that. And I always tell people if they're in therapy and they're wanting their family to change, but nobody else is in therapy, beware, okay? When you change, you're going to rock the boat. People like homeostasis. They like the status quo. They like things how they are, dysfunctional or not. So if you move out of the circle here, you're getting therapy and you're getting better, they're going to like go bonko trying to get things back how they were. It's really interesting to watch if you are in therapy and see how this happens with your family and try and get you back and play your role the way it was. And, maybe you were the scapegoat. Hey, who's going to be our scapegoat? We need you back here so we can get back to that homeostasis. Well, there are also, well, the reason I brought that up with this question was um, let's say there's 5 kids, okay, and the dad is narcissistic. It's more often men in our society, but it can be women, that's for sure. Um, and so he singles out one kid, and I have a client where this happened. There were lots and lots of kids, and he was meanest to this guy, just mean as a snake. And so, yes, that can certainly happen if they took it out on you, or and this client of mine didn't start taking it out on other people, he internalized it. But it could be the other way. It could be that you then, when you were older, started treating people that way. Okay. So one other thing about the systems theory, I was really impressed that somebody asked that question. I thought they might be in college for mental health or business, but organizations are definitely systems for sure. Governments are systems. And so cults are systems. So the whole thing could be narcissistic.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. What's that one that the actor in Top Gun, um, Tom
No,
Cruise.
no, it's
Tom Cruise was the pilot in the plane in Top Gun. Okay, so he's in the religion of my memory today is like shot.
I can't remember what it's called either. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah.
but it's a lot of people define it as a cult, and when you try to leave, they get really upset.
Mm,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen people on YouTube talk about it, and they had a hard time getting away. So that whole thing is a narcissistic entity,
Wow.
and they want control of each other and everybody who's in it. So, and political parties, both political parties in our country, you don't have many weak people in there. They're strong personalities and maybe narcissists, which may or may not affect the good job they do. In some ways, you may want them to be because they're strong in what they believe, but
We got a little bit of clarification, Janet, on the question that the person in the chat asked. He said,
yes,
um, the example that he gives is if I told my dad I was scared of a previous action that he'd done, right? Hey, dad, when you did X, it scared me. Then later on in the next conversation, he would say to the client, this person, that he was scared of him.
that he was scared of the kid.
Yeah, dad was scared of the boy.
Sounds like a narcissist. Yeah.
Yeah, why would the narcissist do that? What would it
To
mean?
diminish what he was doing to the kid, to
Mm.
diminish that he scared the kid. Oh, well, I was scared of you. So then the kid starts questioning himself.
Okay.
And now, especially if it's a kid, and the dad's a big guy, of course there's a big differential there. And why would the father be scared of the kid?
Right. Just
Yeah.
makes him doubt, right?
Right, doubt himself, yes. Thank you for that clarification. That helped me to answer it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else we got going?
Well, maybe let's do one more question.
Okay.
Say someone realizes that their relationship with the narcissist and they have
I'm
children.
sorry, you cut out a little. Well,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so say you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you're married, and you're realizing that you have children and you would like to leave and take the children, but you don't really have support. Perhaps you haven't worked, right? And so you need to get back in the workforce. What would be some steps to take to be able to do that?
okay, good question. I always suggest to my clients in that situation to plan. Um, they know when it's safest, and I suggest they plan financially, okay, and emotionally, and that they um, find a job that they can maybe put some money away, that they get legal advice. You don't have to get a divorce simply because you go ask a lawyer questions. They all have a free consultation, or even if you pay the outrageous one-time uh, consult fee, it's okay to have all your questions ready. And don't treat them as your therapist, treat them as your lawyer. Boom, 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 boom. And ask those questions so you're prepared. And that way, it does make it easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's violence, if there's violence, get out right away. Go to a shelter, go to a relative or to a shelter, because we read too much in the papers every day about, father killed the kids and the mother, or there was one yesterday, the mother killed her two children because the
Oh my
dad
God.
left, and then killed herself and her mother. So
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
what a tragedy.
yeah, it's horrible. So um yeah,
Yeah.
be careful with that. If there is violence, you need to protect yourself, and there's certainly shelters that will help you. There's some that even have programs to get you training for a new job, or scholarships, go back to school. Yeah. But yeah, then, a lot of times they end up staying with parents who, one of the parents is a narcissist. That's why they married the narcissist in the first place, which is all very subconscious. But uh, yeah, so then, it's going to be a long haul. You just have to keep working on yourself, keep setting boundaries, and planning, and someday you'll have your own place and raise your kids in a healthy way.
And in the meantime, probably come see Janet because she'll
Yeah,
be able to accompany you well, right? So,
yes, I
yeah.
would love to. I'm at You can find me at latarihealth.com/Janet. Has my biography and a form there where you can ask me to touch.
Awesome. Do you have a question there, Miss Elena? Do you have a question?
Oh, sorry. No. Thank you.
No. Oh, okay. Okay.
My phone activated because I put it on my person. All right.
Oops. No problem. No
Thank you.
problem. Well, thank you for joining us today. Well, we want to thank everyone for spending the time with us, taking time out of your lunch hour to join us and to learn some more about narcissistic abuse and surviving it and thriving. Thank you, Janet, for your time. And we will definitely have to do a third one in the future. God bless.